Thank you for that. And just reflecting on the comments that you've had back from professionals, reflecting on it myself, I hear those same things. I think the issue for me, though, and the reason I'm really keen that the CLAHRC does this study, is because despite the fact that different professionals, whether inside health or outside health, think they know what the answers are, the commissioners, and there are several commissioners, of course, don't all agree. So for me, this study is really important, and I think I'd be, although I think it's risky for me to be seen to be involved in this, if there's any way I can help in putting back those points to people who are sceptical, I'd be keen to help with it. That's all I'd say, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Warren Curley. I'm a researcher on the patient safety theme. Emma, the only thing I'd say is surely people are right to have all those concerns because this is research, so we don't know what the outcomes are going to be, and there may be things that come up that the people won't like.
Yeah, is this working? I agree. I'm just trying to kind of flag them as potential barriers to kind of getting involved in the first place, and yeah, that the consensus statement may not reflect the kind of popular opinion.
Any last question? Terry, last question.
What happens if you don't get consensus?
Then we will spend a long time unpicking the different views of the different stakeholder groups, I think. But yeah, that's the risk of this. But hopefully there'll be a couple of things that people agree on.
So there is a plan if they agree to disagree.
Well, we've defined what consensus means, and so if we don't hit the threshold for consensus on any of the items, then that's a finding. We'll still try and publish.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma.
Thank you. I really, really enjoyed your talk. Obviously, I would because I'm a forensic psychologist. But I think it shows one of what to me as being in CLAHRC from the beginning is one of the struggles we have, because your work is really interesting, but it's focused on people, older offenders, right? Now, I know NOMS is also doing a project about people with learning disabilities. It's got another one about people with autism. And there's always this question for me whether we go back to, we're looking at age, dementia, and that means often that people with learning disabilities, which my interest, will get left out, or whether we ask a different question and say, well, how do prisons operate with people who are not the standard prisoner? And we know that there are lots and lots of those, mothers who have babies, people with learning disabilities, people with autism, all kinds of things. But I think that there's a tension between that issue about whether you focus on a specific group and you can get your partners like at Alzheimer's UK, which you've done really interestingly, or whether we ask bigger, wider questions that cross a load of different groups like the one I've just suggested. And I think your project really highlights that, what I see, but Peter and others may not agree as one of our difficulties, because once you get that wider question, of course your stakeholders increase exponentially, and it may be much more difficult to get an impact, although the questions are exactly the same ones. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question, because this is something we did discuss with NOMS actually at our recent telephone conference. And it did come up indeed, because I don't know if you remember one of the pictures, or actually quite a few of the pictures I showed, with here, a wheelchair ramp, for instance. That's not only older people, obviously. There are people indeed with physical disabilities in prison who would need this as well, regardless of any age, obviously. And also for mobility scooters or other things, blind people, for instance. So there is this question indeed of what do you focus on? And indeed, for a bigger project surrounding integrated care and continuity of care, for instance, we wouldn't necessarily solely want to look at an age-related issue, because the issues go across age. Of course, quite a lot of the issues go across age. But it is very true that we had to focus on something, and we did know that there were restrictions, obviously, and also we did look at very specific needs that we saw pointed out both in the literature from research, but also by health professionals, by care professionals, by the prison government. Particularly Norwich, the governor of Norwich prison has been quite vocal about the aging population in prisons, which again multiplies those issues that we see go across age as well. But that's a very good point, because that's very true, and we have indeed discussed that. It's not just age-related. There are actually issues that go right across ages, absolutely.
Let's take one final question. I think we'll have to hold you.
Carol Roberts, Head of Governance for NHS England for East. I'm very familiar with prisons because I've been working with the Health and Justice team for our region around controlled drugs and visiting around the prisons looking at medicine supply, etc. And I think it was just important to note that the primary care medical services are actually not commissioned by the local authority but by NHS England, and usually they're through a sort of contract, so for Virgin Care and other organisations, etc. And I think one of the things that we've been looking at is the quality of care, and it's our responsibility is to ensure that patients within the prisons have the same access to primary care services as a patient would in the general population, and to look at their care pathways. So the ageing population is a huge problem, as you rightly say, and I know Norwich is one of the only prisons, I think, in our region where they do have an unlocked wing where very elderly patients do go. But one of the things I think we have recognised is that we're not commissioning end-of-life care in our region for our prisons. I think that's of huge concern. But I think the overriding thing also for all prisoners with health is it's this balance between the sort of capacity for security in the prisons, and one of the biggest impacts really on mental health in all prisoners is the fact that due to shortages in security and to resources in prisons, is that prisons are locked down for long periods of time, and this has a huge impact on their mental health. So you've got the sort of increasing pressure on the sort of mental health of prisoners because of this, but also the ageing population, as you rightly say. And there are some, I think Bure has got a wing for long-term condition patients, so they are kept separately. But again, the end of life, I think, is the area where we haven't got properly commissioned services at the moment that we really need to be putting some pressure, I think, on NHS England to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'll focus actually on the end-of-life care, if that's okay, because that's one of the things we have discussed with the government as well. We came across, indeed, this issue as well, and specifically because dying in prison is legally not allowed, so to speak, because there is actually a legal inquiry if you die in the prison estate. So you would go into the hospice, or you have to go into the NHS. So it can be indeed quite costly. And end-of-life care, but dying in itself and dying with dignity, the whole dignity agenda is of major importance, and this is one of the key issues that we flagged up as well, and that we are now going to focus on as well. So I'm happy you actually pointed that out, because this is a really big issue, and we would like to indeed do further work on this as well. Yes, thank you.